Buju, wago shindagu migizi indodem, gazaga squaji mekag, indun jaba. Today I'd like to share a little bit about how Native people have shaped modern democracy. This is a little piece of history that I think is little understood and often a marginalized narrative in our shared world history. There were 5 tribes in the northeastern part of the United States that used to fight each other terribly. Today we now know of them as, the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk. And these 5 tribes had a debilitating warfare between them. Eventually, and there's much more to the story about how this came about, they decided to make peace. Bundled up their implements of war, buried them at the base of a great pine tree. This is where we get the super American expression, to bury the hatchet, as a way of saying to make peace. When they did that, each maintained its independent language, culture, and customs, but they had a shared political structure and entity that endured for a very long time. Now, once we get to the age of colonization and the birth of the American nation, some of America's founding fathers, in particular Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, wrote extensively about this confederacy. In their language, the Haudenosaunee, in English texts often referred to as the Iroquois Confederacy. And the Haudenosaunee were really revered by both Jefferson and Franklin, who were trying to think about, would it be possible to take these older ideas about democracy? Some of America's democratic ideas come from the ancient Greeks. That's the first example we have of voting, taking different colored rocks and putting the one either for or against into the bucket and then counting them up and seeing who had the most votes. Also, ideas about representative government come from the Romans. So that includes a Senate. In fact, the Roman state house is the model for most of the state houses for most states across the United States of America, because there is this Greco-Roman influence on the structure of American democracy. However, the idea about how could we have independent states part of a common nation is something that was largely borrowed from the so-called Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And so this was infused into American democracy. There are complex dynamics at play. One of the things that folks like Jefferson were really concerned about is how can you have states where some people believe that owning other humans is a wonderful idea in a nation where some people believe it is immoral. So it was in part an enabling mechanism for the institution of slavery as a motive for this. But if you look at Hamilton and the Federalist Papers and things like that, there was a decision to have only a small number of clearly defined federal powers, and everything else was reserved for the states. This is something that was generated largely through study of and the influence of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy. As soon as America has its revolution, it's just a couple years later, and the French are copying the Americans. And this idea about representative democracy that has independent states, or for Canada, provinces, or for Switzerland, cantons, that these independent entities are part of a greater national polity, is something that is deeply influenced and originates from the Haudenosaunee people. So one of the things to think about as we understand this history, we should be teaching about it for multiple reasons. It is a more complete and true and accurate understanding of America's political systems and structures, as well as those of democracies around the world. But also, it provides a way for us to hold up marginalized groups and peoples in a way that enhances our understanding of our shared nation, not just understanding one another. Both things are important. I've sometimes run into people who said, if we're going to do all this diversity stuff in the curriculum, kids aren't even going to know anything about the Constitution. But actually, people of color are also part of America. And when you teach about our contributions to the country, everyone will understand the country all the better. Miigwech. Thanks for watching today. I'm Anton Treuer. Let's keep in touch. I'm active on social media, and my website has lots of information on my books, speaking engagements, resources for the Ojibwe language, teachers, and more. Miigwech.